right? What a moment this is, right? What an incredible moment, right? What an incredible moment. We literally stand poised between utopia and dystopia. And the utopia is more beautiful than we can possibly imagine. And it's our obligation, right? It's our responsibility. It's our delight, right, to imagine it. Oh my God. And the dystopia, right? The level of pain and suffering, right? The loss of all that's good and true and beautiful lurks at the door. And often we're caught up with false flags. We're caught up in what seem to be dramatic events. But actually, that's not where the action's happening. The action's happening someplace else, quietly. There are creeping annexations of our very personhood, creeping annexations of what it means at the very core to be a human being. And we barely notice they're happening until they're upon us and we're trapped on the inside. Oh my God. And the most potent response we have is to actually feeling the evolutionary impulse moving through us, speak as the leading edge of evolution and tell a new story, but not a fanciful story, right? Not a conjecture, not a made up story, but the best integration we have in the world today, the hottest, most beautiful, most true, most good integration that we have in the world today of the deepest structural insights, interior insights, and exterior insights of all of the great traditions of pre-modernity, all the great understandings and insights and sciences of modernity, all of the wisdom of the best parts of post-modernity. We bring it all together and we weave it together in a seamless embrace, a new story. And that new story is the story that we're here to tell. And literally, I'm spending an enormous amount of time, friends, reading the literature and trying to comb reality to understand where we are. Let me just ask you a question. Here's a simple question. If your cell phone was taken away and all of your devices for 24 hours, how would you do? How would you feel? Most people in the world who are connected through their devices would feel terrible, devastated. Virtually all people below the age of 35 would feel nauseous and sick. And virtually all people below the age of 20 actually would border on breakdown and intense nervousness, right? And anxiety. Let me ask you a question. Why would that be true? Why would that be true? Where did your inner self go to? Where did my inner self go to? Where was our attention stolen away to? Who is it? Who is the we, right? Who is the, right? What is the force in the world that actually entered into the interior of you and recast your own interior experience without your permission? Wow. So that the overwhelming majority of people below 35 today, right, would actually fall into some sense of depression if they were cut off from their connectivity to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, social media, right, etc. Well, what does that mean? That's shocking. It's so much deeper than that, right? To really get what's going on and where the genuine threat to society is. And it's a new form of existential risk. And I want to invite you to step into this as we're going to set our intention today. There's two forms of existential risk. And we've never quite framed it this way, but it's really important and it's elegant and it's critical to understand. One form of existential risk comes from objective factors, which are various forms of either disaster or social dynamics that work in a particular way, but interior social dynamics. So a disaster would be, right, and based on political structures that we haven't deconstructed, would be a nuclear device goes off. That's a shocking issue that needs an enormous amount of conversation. We think that threat has gone. It's actually not. It's just gone from the headlines. I've done an enormous amount of study on this issue in the last 4 months, and the threat of a random nuclear explosion is as significant or more than it was at the height of the Cold War. Wow. But now we're worried about a random explosion, let alone a non-state actor rogue deployment, right, of a nuclear device. That's one kind of, and we can actually take that down and we can remove that threat. It requires political will, but that's one form of existential risk. Another form of existential risk is, right, pandemics gone wild, right? A third form of existential risk is certain forms of climate change, right? If they play in a particular way, methane gas under the tundras, that's another form of existential risk, right? That's one form of existential risk, right? Then there's another form, right? There's another structure within this first form. There's another kind of subset within this first form, right? Which has to do with what we've called the rivalrous conflict that defines reality. We live in a story, which is a story of rivalrous conflict. That's our story. The rivalrous conflict is governed by a win-lose metrics. That drives the extraction model from Earth, in which we take out from Earth what it took billions of years to create, critical resource. But it also drives the exponential growth curves which always fall off. And it creates a vast, fragile system, which by its very nature is self-terminating. Because that's a second, right? That's a second structure within this first form of existential risk, right? One is these climate change, nuclear weapons, right? A third form would be, all within the first structure. I'm calling these different forms. These are all part of the first form. Okay, these are all part of the first form. These are different subsets in the first form. Let me make it more specific. So the notion of artificial intelligence run amok that Nick Bostrom at the Oxford Center has written so much about in the last 20 years, right? Where existential risk, following its own interior imperative, basically takes over the story, right? That's not impossible, right? It's got a significant chance if we don't actually monitor how artificial intelligence develops in the next, 70, 80, 90, 100 years. Right? So those are all things we need to look at very, very carefully. But that's not what we've talked about those before. And they're all based on the way we change them, right? Is that we have to actually change our essential story of humanity. And it's only by changing the story, right, that actually we change the interior source code of reality, right, that we actually begin to develop the common will, right, the shared global coherence and global will to address these issues. And it's only by telling a new story, right, which is a shared story where we actually understand we're part of a shared humanity, right? There's a universal grammar of value, that our new story is based on a shared set of first principles and first values that we all actually agree to, right? Which are actually available. It's actually there. It's never been done before. We need to articulate these first principles and first values in order to actually get to a universal grammar of value, which will then displace the win-lose metrics of rival versus conflict, which is the generator function for all of this first set of existential risks. Okay? So if this is the first time today, I'm sorry if this is like, whoa, where did I show up? Right? So we're just about to set our intention. That's the first form of existential risk. And we're addressing that. And part of our intention here is to tell this new story, right? To actually tell this new story of reality, which is this evolutionary story, this love story, right? But not a casual love story, not an ordinary love story, but actually an understanding of reality as eros animating the four forces, right? Eros expressed as intimacy, reality being the evolution of intimacy. And these are all, I'm just touching on these. I'm not explaining them. I'm just alluding to very deep structures of thought that we've worked with. extensively and in depth, and we're going to continue to work with. But I want to, holding that as a contrast, I want to, with your permission, move to a different form of existential risk, okay? So the first form of existential risk to humanity is that we're going to somehow wipe ourselves out, right? Based on any of the scenarios which I just briefly alluded to now, okay? So humanity will disappear because, right, systems will collapse, right? Because of, or as a function of, right, any of the reasons I've mentioned up till now, plus another few. Okay, that's one form of existential risk to humanity. Now hold on to your breath, okay? And I spent all this time kind of creating this context, because context here is everything. And we're kind of going together here, right, in one mountain, many paths, right? We're a band of revolutionaries, right, committed to evolving the source code of consciousness and culture, which is the source code of love. We're committed to a planetary awakening and love through unique self symphonies. But to get there, right, I'm never talking at you, right? I'm talking with you. I'm trying to create a field of shared understanding that we can all step into together. Then we become activists in the field. We begin to move together as this small group of people, right? Just a few hundred of us at the core, and then a few thousand at the second core, right? And we're listening from around the world. But as Margaret Mead said, if you think a small group of people can't change the world, it's only a small group of people radically committed to each other, evolutionary family, who can change the world. So that's why I'm spending, with permission, right, so much time on the context here, okay? So I want you to get the context for this new way of looking at this new way of saying it. Okay, so do we have a drum roll in the house? A lot of anticipation here. So Goffney, you better say something interesting, or people are going to say, well, what was all that buildup for? But it's really big, okay? And it's really simple. And it's going to be like, really? That's it? So here it is. The second form of existential risk to humanity is not that humanity is going to get destroyed by one of these factors that I described, but that actually we'll stop being human. Okay, how many people got that? Well, actually, the existential risk to humanity is that actually in some fundamental way, we'll stop being human. Does everyone get that? Right, that what it means to human being, what it means to be a human being won't be available, right, to most of humanity. That's huge. Does everyone get that? That's an entirely new form of existential risk, right? It's not existential risk to humanity because something's going to happen to us. It's rather what I would call a kind of annexation of humanity creep. It's this gradual creep, right? And it's gradually, incrementally, right, embracing us, right? And we stop being human beings as we understand it to be a human being. And all of the things that define human beings actually disappear, right? So I'm going to just share one more thing. That's what's happening today. It's so dramatic that it's almost unimaginable. I'm just going to give you just one example. So Enoch says, please explain. I'll give you one example. So the very fact that you can't disconnect, right? You're 35 years old, you can't disconnect from your iPhone, and you've got all these ads coming at you all the time, right? And you're completely sucked in, right, to how many likes you got, right, and how much approval you got, and how many thumbs up and how many thumbs down, right? And you feel actually nervous and filled with anxiety disconnecting from your device. That's already the beginning of your dehumanizing, right? You're no longer just a human being. You're actually, you and your device are actually one. Do you get it? You and your device are one. And then you go from holdables, you're holding your device, to wearables. Wearables are just beginning around the world. And wearables, right, is when your device, right, you wear either a biometric sensor on the outside, a biometric sensor on the inside, and in which we actually begin to track. You begin to track everything, okay? Wow, okay? And these biometric sensors, right, combine with your smartphone and your smart thermostat and your smart bed. That's called the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things, right, the goal is to become seamless, or it's called ubiquitous computing. Yes, IoT, Paul, right? Ubiquitous computing or the Internet of Things. So pretty soon, right? And one of the ways the Internet of Things is actually infiltrating society is through digital assistants, right? Oh, you've got a digital assistant. Her name's Alexa, right? Alexa is a digital assistant that people are using all over the world. But what happens is, right, your digital assistant, right, or your biometric sensor, right, or your smartphone or your smart bed or your smart appliances, all of which record data, right? They record everything you do. Or your WhatsApp app, WhatsApp, which is your free app that you use all the time, but all of the data is sent to a central organized system, which is driven by and animated by machine intelligence, which then analyzes not just what you did, not just which website, that's nothing. It analyzes, it's able to analyze, right, your mood, how you feel, what your likes are, what your dislikes are, what your preferences are. It begins to know you, at least in terms of being able to manipulate your action in many ways better than you actually know yourself. Okay? So there's this sense of, just kind of go slow with me, everyone, right? There's the sense of ever encroaching machine intelligence, which is actually getting more and more pervasive. We're just at the beginning of it. We're just at the beginning of biometric sensors. We're at the beginning of the Internet of Things. Right? We're at the beginning of, right, the attention economy that steals your attention. But what happens is all of this is recorded. It's recorded and then fed into this machine intelligence process, which, using advanced machine intelligence of the kind that is, exponentially more powerful than the early machine intelligence that was used to defeat chess champion Boris Kasparov. So all of that, right, develops a kind of personality profile on you, and then begins to monitor you more closely, and then to nudge you this way, and then to nudge you that way, and then to invite you here and to invite you there. And then it begins to kind of suggest voting suggestions. It's just, we're at the very beginning of a process where, in essence, the human being as we know it is going to begin to disappear. Right? We're actually a worldwide technocracy mediated by the web, right? In which anomalies, right, meaning people acting out of turn with quote unquote acceptable behavior, right, are actually monitored, rewarded, and punished. There's no in-person person to speak to anymore. Everything is determined by the system, right? And the system is driven by, right, big tech, which we might call big brother or big other, right? Which is absorbing your information by giving you all these little apps, then creating a personality profile, then nudging your action, undermining any sense of free will, undermining the individual, and beginning to actually create this hive intelligence, this hive of humanity, this machine hive. So just like the factory in the 20th century, right, determined social relations, now machine intelligence hive, right, is going to become the dominant modality, and literally the human being as we know it will disappear. Now, if you think I just made that up, so you should read, for example, the writings of a certain Professor Pentland, P-E-N, Alex Pentland at MIT, one of the most prestigious professors in the world today, with gaggles of doctoral students, right, who is the successor to B.F. Skinner, the behaviorist, and who is articulating and is one of the key articulators of, right, everything that's driving the web today. Right? He's one of the faces behind the scenes. And when you study Pentland and read his writings, right, he writes one major paper called The Death of the Individual. And it's good news, because for him, the individual is a separate self. And he says there is no real separate self, we're really social selves. And we have to actually come together in this organized hive intelligence, right, to eliminate suffering, right? And that's what actually needs to happen. And he's the person, him and dozens of people around him, right, and that small group, right, of priests, right, who are driving machine intelligence that drives Google and drives, right, the whole story, right, Facebook, and drives, right, Microsoft, and everything that you're interacting with, right? He's actually talking about moving beyond free choice, moving beyond individuality, right? He thinks individuality is a joke, right? And he's being cheered on all over the world. He's actually, to that group of data scientists, we're actually defining the World Wide Web that's working closely with the Western democracies, right? That's defining China. And friends, you want to know where the threat is? Watch out for false flags where everyone puts their attention on a false flag, right? The fourth form of existential risk is that we actually cease to view the human being, right, as human, because we don't actually have a story of what it means to be a human being. A human being becomes a cog, a computational digital object, to borrow the exact phrase of the chair, right, of the chairperson, the CEO of Microsoft, right, to be moved and manipulated for the greater social good. We're so close to it, friends. It's actually beginning to happen, right? Just the fragrances of it are every place, and no one's even noticing. The fourth form of existential risk to humanity is the death of our essential humanity. And here it is, friends. Our essential humanity depends on us having a self-understanding, right? We need an answer to the question of, who am I? And who are we? And who are we together? And what's the relationship of the I to the we? And there are literally, right, within culture today, no good answers to that. No one's even talking about it. We're lost in this old, outmoded sense, right, of being a separate self, or in this enlightenment sense, we're all part of the same one. But actually, right, Alex Pentland and all of the students at MIT, right, who have started dozens of companies that are driving and animating, and they're the key guest speakers and authors of all the papers that are animating and defining Google and Facebook and the entire social media world, right? They've never heard of unique self, right? They've never heard of, right, what we call a unique self symphony, right? For them, Eros is not even on the table, right? We haven't, right? What's happened is, I want to really get this, fundamentalist religion has been dismissed because of its wild overreaches. New Age understandings, right, have been dismissed because of their overreaches, right? Classical meditation, as important as it is in locating true self, doesn't have a real seat at the table in terms of understanding identity, and the correct critiques of separate self being the sum total of identity, which were leveled by Skinner and by Pentland, right, saying we're social selves, right, not really separate selves, was actually correct, but there's nothing else in the wings. There's nothing else happening. There's nothing. What did Da Vinci do at a time between worlds? He told a new story of what it means to be a human being, and the human being's relationship to cosmos based on the best data available. That's what we need to do. We need to actually reformulate in the most gorgeous, stunning way possible what it means to be a human being. What's the answer to the question of who are you? Do we get that, everybody? Right? If we don't do that, right, and we've got to do it in a way, we've got to put out a great library. We need, right, serious kind of academic work, right? And we need serious kind of thought, inspirational work. But here's the thing, right? You might think, wow, let me write a book and sell 1 million copies. That's not going to do it if it's not so grounded, right, and so deep, right, and so powerful, right, and so inarguable, right? Inarguable not because it's dogmatic, because it just like Da Vinci did, right, or Freud did in the best parts of Freud, or Einstein did in the best parts of Einstein, right, or Marx did in the correct parts of his critique, or Darwin did in what he pointed out that was actually really true, right? It becomes self-evidently true. So writing a great book, right, which is just this nice book that people read and they feel good and, wow, it was a great New Age book, that's not going to get us there. Or building another mega church, that's not going to get us there. We have to actually evolve the source code. And if we don't, then Pentland wins. Alex Pentland wins. And look up Alex Pentland, everyone, afterwards, right? Distinguished professor, good guy. I'd love to have dinner with him. But actually, right, he's about, and Google's about, right? And Facebook's about, and WhatsApp is about. It's about actually doing two things. One, it's a straight profit motive. Let's give you a whole bunch of apps. You're going to be herded. That's the word they actually use. They call it herding. You herd animals, H-E-R-D. You herd, you tune people, you herd them, right? And you create this effective, right, hive, right, which is, right, following the rules of acceptable behavior. And this is for good motive. These are all with good motives. But actually, it's the utter destruction of what it means to be a human being. To be a human being, right, and friends, brothers and sisters, to be a human being means to live within the Tao, T-A-O. The Tao is the way, right? The Tao is first principles and first values. And first principles and first values that are not subject to commodification. First principles and first values that are our lifeblood. There are the axioms. They're the premises on which we live. They're the self-evident truths, right, that define our humanity. Right? It's our sense of the irreducible dignity of our uniqueness. It's the sense of eros that animates us. It's the sense of love that moves us to stake on another person and to sacrifice, right, everything. It's that which moves us to care, right, to hold another human being. It's what moves us to heroism. It's what moves us to establish and to look for and to search for meaning, right? Because and to disclose meaning. And it's what loyalty is about. It's the building of trust between human beings, right? It's how we resolve conflicts, right? It's how we feel each other, right? It's our yearning for intimacies, which define and animate who we are. It's the dignity of our desires. All of that is left out by Alex Pentland. And those are exteriors. All of it's left out by B.F. Skinner. But B.F. Skinner, in his book, Beyond Freedom and Dignity, the great Harvard professor, right, he was attacked because he revealed that position too openly. Alex Pentland is rewriting Skinner, but doesn't quote Skinner at all. He's doing it much more cleverly. Now, Alex Pentland's not a bad man. He's a good man, right? But here's the thing. It's not that we become bad men. We cease being men. Right? We cease being women. It's not that we become bad human beings. We cease being human beings. In other words, we articulate a vision, right, which is no longer a human vision. It's not based, right, on this, right? It's about what C.S. Lewis once called the abolition of man. Right? You see, we move to conquer nature and to conquer, right? And then we conquer human nature. When we conquer human nature, then nature itself has conquered us. And human nature is to live in the Tao. Human nature is to live in first principles, right? Human nature is to live in first values and to be animated by first principles and first values. So we're at this Da Vinci moment. And in this Da Vinci moment, we must articulate first principles and first values. Everything depends on it. And if we can't, then what's going to happen is Alex Pentland, right, and the whole gang of well-meaning Skinner, B.F. Skinner directed animated folks are going to actually, right, define reality, because that's where it's going now. The entire enterprise of social media, the entire enterprise of the web that we're all plugged into, that's defining us and even more so our children and grandchildren, right, is becoming a mechanized, right, machine intelligence like hive world. We've got to actually articulate, that's what we're here to do, to articulate source code visions. Okay? It's big. It's big. Reality is not behaviorism. Right? That's right. Jamie says reality is eros. But actually the entire enterprise of the web is what they call herding and tuning behaviorism, right? But under a different name, under more pleasant names, under more appropriate social guises. Okay, so wow. So what are we standing for? Right? We are the revolutionaries. That's our job. And I know that's audacious, but it's true. And our commitment's not just have a nice experience here today at one mountain, many paths, right? But our commitment is to actually articulate the core structures of the Tao, right? The way, right? Not of one religion, not of one system of psychology, but the implicit premises of human beings, the interior intelligence of divinity animated through human beings, right? The evolutionary impulse and all of its wonder and beauty and poignancy animated through human beings. We're here to integrate the best of that knowing of what it means to be a baby-faced divine, a human being animated by first principles and first values, right? And to express those and to codify them, right, in evolutionary love codes, right? And not for the sake of conquering the world, for the sake of making them available. So they become part of the very source code, part of the very air we breathe, because that's what's getting lost, right? You know, I've been reading this book over the last couple of months, I've shared with you, Surveillance Capitalism. What's missing in the book? Eros. Her critique of big tech is gorgeous, but there's no ground to the critique because there's no discussion of Eros. There is no discussion of first principles or first values. It's all euphemisms, but none of it's clear, right? There's no rallying point. There's no universal grammar of value. So we can't come home. This is our revolution. This is our intention. Our intention is to evolve the source code, okay? And for the next few weeks, that's what we're going to be talking about. We've been talking about first principles. Yes, like a trembling yes, says Mosa. And Mosa, right? That's why unique voice is so important, right? It's unbelievable. You know, Mosa, right? My dear friend just wrote yes. And Mosa and I have talked about writing together an essay on unique voice. So it's actually shocking. One of the things that's happening on the web is the hijacking of your voice. Your voice and your conversation is used in order to analyze and inflect, right? Your inflections to determine how you're going to act in order to have appropriate predictive analysis in order to both control your behavior through selling your ads and control your social behavior, right? It's a complete desecration, most of what it means to have a voice. A voice is sacred. A voice is not a source of experience, right? That's hijacked by Alexa, who's your digital assistant, which is really surveillance capitalism in disguise, seeking to mine data from human experience of your unique and gorgeous voice in order to actually develop, right, a secret script, which is a secret text, right, which is the machine intelligence generated personality profile of how you'll act in order to be able to manipulate you. That's not what voice is, right? That's not what a human conversation is. Human conversation is sacred. Life is a series of conversations. Voice is sacred. The quality of your voice is sacred. Like, wow. It's like, wow, right? And I apologize to everyone. I'm excited about this morning, but I'm excited trembling before God, right? It's like voice is sacred, right? And so we need, right? We need Mosa's unique voice. That's Mosa's unique self. And we need the Unique Self Institute. Right. And we need the phenomenology of Eros, right? And we need, right, Loving Your Way to Enlightenment, right? Which is another book that Shahati's working with. And we need our festival, and we need at the center one mountain, and we need evolutionary love codes, and we need evolutionary sermons, right? And we need to generate, right, Homo, amor, and we need to generate funding, right, in order to make this happen, right? Right. Like, and to make this, right, real and alive, right? This is it. We're the revolution. Right? I wish I could tell there's 20 other groups like this. There aren't. Right? There are people doing individual pieces that are wildly important, and like imaginal cells, right, in a chrysalis, right, chrysalis, right, in which the caterpillar is turning into a butterfly, and the immune system tries to kill the imaginal cells. They've got to find each other. So we should, of course, find and work with other groups that are doing important things. And of course, there's wonderful things happening. But this piece, this evolving the source code, this articulating of the mimetic structures, right? This is ours to do, friends. And every piece matters. In that moment, for example, Mosa, when we were together in Portland, right? And we talked about voice, and we kind of, oh, wow, we saw it. Raquel, right? Get that computer of yours so we can have you, right, in it with us, right? No one's extra. No one's extra. Each one of us can play a role here, right? Each one of us has an instrument, right, in this evolutionary family. We're an evolutionary family, right? There's Christina, right? Dr. Christina Kincaid, right? My partner is like wildly working on the phenomenology of Eros, right? And we did Return to Eros, which is wildly important, right? Big deal. It's a big deal. And then, you know, our friend Zach Stein, right, is working, right, deeply on, right, with Homo, amor, right? And on, right, a new politics of evolutionary love, right? And, right, we're working on the tenets of intimacy, right? And Shot, right, is holding the festival and working on Loving Your Way to Enlightenment, right? And Claire is founding the Unique Self Institute, right? And Lady J, right? And Jamie, right? And Hans, right? David, Christina Amelon, right? Our lead, right? Christina Amelon together with Krista, our lead executive producers, right? Krista holding the space day and night, right? And developing new structures, and Christopher Van Buren, right? And Oriana, we're waiting for this, right? The 70, right? Each piece, right? Each piece, we need all of us. And I could have mentioned, right, 50 more people. Tom Goddard, oh my God, right? Oh my God, right? The World Spirituality Manual, right? And the Unique Self Process, right? Terry's book, right? Your True Vocation, right? And Terry's now read Surveillance Capitalism well and can integrate some of that, right? And we need all of us, right? And there's 20 more names I could mention. I'm just trying to be short, so please don't take offense. I'm just, right? But just like we need each other, Suzette, right? We need each other. This is ours to do. This is ours to do. This is ours to do. This is not, our intention here is not, let's just get together and hang out and have a nice church or have a nice One Mountain. Our intention is revolution, right? The next few weeks, right, in One Mountain, we're going to be bringing together, right, we're going to be working together with our Unique Self Institute, and we're going to be actually working deeply on this answer to the question of who are you? And I'm going to try and actually, with your permission, everyone, I'm going to try and interpose it with the writings that are coming out of the tech world today, that are coming from MIT Alex Pentland, that are coming from Google and from Facebook. And I want to actually compare and contrast Unique Self Symphony, right, with these other voices. And I want to say these other voices are not bad people. They're not the devil. They don't have available to them mimetic structures, right? Memes, right? Dharma, right? Interior sciences, right? That are actually available, right? And capable, right? Of charting the next way. So we've got to actually articulate those source code structures, and then they'll be picked up. And if Unique Self Symphony was available as a model, then we could actually program differently. Does that make sense, everyone? It's like, wow. David, give us a code.
The answer to the question of who are you is you are a unique self. You are an irreducibly unique expression of the love intelligence and love beauty that is the initiating and animating eros and energy of all that is, that lives in you, as you, and through you. Your unique self is the expression of your true self. The total number of true selves in the world is one. Your awakening takes place when you realize that you are not merely a separate self, but a true self. True self is the singular that has no plural. True self plus your unique perspective and your unique intimacy equals unique self. And finally, when you find others to join genius with you, you contribute your unique note into the planetary awakening. You are being recorded and activated in the book of evolutionary life. You become Homo, amor. You are lived as a unique expression of love, beauty, and love intelligence for all that is. Your unique self, Homo, amor, joins the unique self symphony, and the planet awakens as love. And with that, I turn my word back to you, Dr. Mark.
Thank you, David. Now, every sentence there we've got to unpack. Right? Does everyone get that? We've got to show that uniqueness is a first principle of cosmos. We have to show the evolution of uniqueness, that it's actually structural to cosmos. We have to show how uniqueness awakens in an individual human being and what that means. We have to distinguish between unique self and separate self, right? We have to show why uniqueness doesn't separate, but it's the currency of connection. We have to show why the irreducible dignity of every human being is that they've got a unique quality of intimacy, right? Which is not part of hive intelligence. But they've got a unique perspective. They have an irreducibly unique way of being and becoming. They have a song to sing and a poem to write and a story to live, right? That is irreducibly significant, right? And they're not merely separate selves, they're part of, they're unique expressions of the one. I'm not merely true self, right? Which is I've moved from separate self to true self. I realize I'm part of the field of consciousness. Then I awaken more deeply, right, to my infinite personhood as unique self. And where did my unique self come from? Reality itself intended it, right? I mean, the same intelligence of cosmos that manifested, right, our friend Alex Pentland as an irreducible, unique self, manifested David and manifested Krista and manifested Joycey, right? We actually, reality, one of the trajectories, one of the plot lines of reality is the movement to ever more full uniqueness, ever more conscious uniqueness. And human dignity is based on the fact that we're not exchangeable cogs and we're not just acted upon. Pentland and Skinner write, we have to realize that, right, we're not the locus of action. We're always being acted upon by the world. No, we act upon the world. And if we're always being acted on, then we're objects. It's the ultimate objectification. We're not objects, we're subjects, right? We are creative subjects. The entire, right, all human beings are born creative. The entire evolutionary impulse, the creativity of cosmos lives in each of us individually and uniquely, not as separate selves. This is our higher individuation beyond separate self. Not our ego self, it's our higher individuation beyond ego. That's my gorgeousness. Wow. So we've got to land that. We got to understand that. We got to understand that deeply, right? And landing unique self, right, which is the role of Unique Self Institute, which is a partner to One Mountain, which Claire Molinare is holding and building a new website. And in here, right, Claire's pouring her funds, right, into that website, right, to actually create it and to make it happen, right? Because she's saying, wow, this is mine to do. That's a unique self stepping forward. That's how it happens. Wow. It's a big deal. I just want everyone to get this. We pour ourselves into this, right? It's like, wow, right? We stake our lives on it, right? And we're brothers and sisters in it, right? We're all brothers and sisters. When we started working on the Outrageous Love Project, a bunch of years ago in 2014, right? Dr. Christina Kincaid poured energy, funds, resources, right? And that created the Outrageous Love Dharma, right? That's how it works. When someone says, this is my unique self, and we're all unique and we're all brothers and sisters, right? We're all part of this unique self symphony and we're all playing starring roles. And there's no co-stars here. I mean, that's the essence of unique self. Unique self says there are no co-stars. There are no co-stars, right? Every single person has a starring role and is irreducibly needed, right? Wow. It's such a big deal, friends. Okay. So let's do like this, okay? Right? Unique self is this unique incarnation of amor, of the love intelligence. And we're not alone in the cosmos. We're held by the divine. We're held by the infinity of intimacy, right? Our unique selves all together are faces, right, of the larger field of love intelligence, right? The larger integrated oneness, right? The unified field of the whole thing, of which we're all individuated and gorgeous pieces beyond imagination. We're not alone. Before there was a human neocortex, there was mitosis and meiosis. We're at home in cosmos. We were meant to be here. The anthropic principle, which points out the fine-tuning of cosmos for the emergence of humanity, right? Anthro-ontology, right? The principle that says that actually the deep inwardness is the space we create meaning, right? And for Skinner and for Pentland and for countless writers, right, in the kind of Googleplex world, the inward space of creation of meaning is irrelevant, right? Meaning is created by people acting upon us. That's the assumption. And the entire web is built to tune and herd us, right, into kind of a benign, effective social unit, which will destroy our very humanity. Wow. And in the end, we become replaceable. And when we become replaceable and we're not needed, right, then we're in utter disaster. Then not only have we lost our humanity, right, existential risk in the sense of this new way of losing our very humanity, but actually we become irrelevant. What happens when we become irrelevant? Right? When the issue is not, as it was in the 20th century, exploitation, but the issue of the 21st century is that most human beings in the world don't hold jobs because AI has taken over. And then at a certain point, I'm going to add something I've never added, right? We're no longer even needed as customers. Right now, we're needed as customers, targeted ads. But what happens when AI starts trading with other AI, right? Controlled by, right, a very, very few group of people. Right? That's exactly what's happening. There's very, very tiny elite controlling, right, the AI world, right, in a world of scarce resources, right? And most of human beings are not needed at all, right? And there's threats of climate change, and there's nuclear threats, and right, and you have all the threats at play. What do you think happens to all those irrelevant human beings? It's not good. Does everyone get it? If there's not a script of unique self engraved in the heart of cosmos that shapes our policy, if there's not a movement towards unique self symphony that shapes our education, right, in a 21st century, right, the challenge is not exploitation. The challenge is that most of humanity becomes irrelevant. Right, friends, that's where the threat is. And it's real. And we are here to meet it. And we have not yet begun to fight. We have not yet begun to love, right? We have not yet begun to pray, right? We have not yet begun to come together as unique self-symphony, right? In which the cacophony of human voices coming together, in which no human voice is lost and every human being merges together in this larger explosion of outrageous love. That's a force that can sweep away all tyrannies.